Welcome to For the Record, an unfiltered view on current trends and timeless advice for surviving in the aesthetics industry. Whether you're an injector, practice owner, sales rep, or marketer, it's time to set the record straight. Each week we cut through the chaos and showcase diverse perspectives and winning ideas from the best minds in the industry. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Hall, Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record. Now, let's get started on this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Season 6 of For the Record. We're thrilled to be back for another great season, and the industry has shifted in big ways since I saw you guys all last. So we're going to keep talking about that this season and what's happening in the marketplace. And we have today an expert in all things innovation, just the rapid change across our industry, the consolidation, really everything. I met this guy before COVID, or actually during COVID. He was making a big shift in his career from being a W-2 sales guy in a business that obviously COVID impacted everyone, to then going out on his own. And he has become this, blossomed into this amazing entrepreneur who runs now two businesses as CEO. One is Career in Aesthetics, which is helping to staff independent salespeople all across the country, selling amazing products, a full portfolio of things and practices. And also the other one is BT Medical Innovations, which is helping to bring those products to market and to bring those products to practices all across the country. And in the line of work of doing both of those, he's become really an expert in this 1099 independent sales rep model, which I think is sweeping the nation and so important right now, but also big in the peptide market with some really cool groups that we'll talk about on the podcast. He's helping to spearhead their go-to-market strategy. Also, the whole regen movement coming in, the regenerative medicine movement, and really being in the practices to help to guide that. Handheld devices, as we think about practices going from 1 to 50, how do you actually staff all those with devices? Because it costs a friggin' fortune in lasers. You guys all know that, the laser graveyard dilemma. But this guy knows how to do all of it. He is a delightful human to be around, by the way. His LinkedIn is so fun. I love looking at all of his Instagram posts because he's busy moving and shaking, raising kids, doing the things like all the rest of us are doing too, and really making it a standout company, both companies, and just really kicking ass. So I'm thrilled to introduce my friend, Mr. Brandon James Thompson. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about all things aesthetic.
Well, what I think is the coolest thing about you, Brandon, that we probably didn't really even hit on there, is you are toe in the water of AI as well, which is like my lifeblood. The thing that I live and breathe for is like, how do we make work faster, smarter, better? So we're going to dive into that as well. But for our audience who doesn't know you and who is not following you on LinkedIn, which go follow him, by the way, give us a quick rundown of your background and what makes you the expert in all these topics.
So thank you for the question. My background is simple, and I give this advice to any young aspiring rep trying to break into medical device, specifically in aesthetics. I sold copiers for a couple of years. I did have a brief stint after proving myself that I could cold call, door knock, hit quota, and I was I worked for an orthopedic group, Johnson & Johnson DePuy. I didn't love being in surgery. My brother's a physician. That was not my forte. And I broke into the medical device arena selling dental lasers. I never reached number one with that company, but I was number 2 rep 2 years in a row. And I got recruited into aesthetics in 2008. I started off with Syneron, was Rookie of the Year, transferred over to Cutera when my manager became VP of Cutera. And I left there as number 1 rep. And anytime I left a job opportunity, it was always for one of 3 reasons: leadership, money, or culture. And for me, it was really the leadership opportunity. So I got an opportunity to join a startup called Alpheon Strathspey Crown. Many of you remember it, and it put me on the map nationwide. I did join about 3 startups over a 6-year period, and I helped jumpstart all of them. And I decided that versus working for startups, I wanted to branch off on my own. And you helped me jumpstart my business during COVID. And so here we are today. And just to reiterate, with Careers in Aesthetics, we recruit for the best: BTL, Cyton, Roar. We're helping hire W-2 reps at some of the new regenerative companies like Mage Group coming to the United States, Regeron, the salmon sperm facial. So we are busy recruiting W-2s, but I have seen a major shift where lots of W-2 tenured reps who are extremely successful, whether they be in injectables or device, they've wanted to branch off on their own for multiple reasons. But the number 1 reason is independence and culture.
Well, it's interesting. I was listening to your LinkedIn on the way in because, you are like a LinkedIn prolific dude about people who are in your pipeline to place in careers. If they call and follow up and they're diligent, it's always a much better placement for you because they're obviously involved in what's happening in their career and they're on top of things. And it kind of made me think about this, a practice owner who's seeing this shift, who's so used to the W-2, like they're used to the Galderma person coming in or Allergan person coming in. They have a bit of a panic of like, oh my gosh, this person doesn't have a real career. Like they're not with a real company. I've heard this. And I'm like, actually, they have a lot of careers. Like they're working for a lot of different companies doing different things. And they're actually sort of curating a basket for you versus only having one treasure trove. They've got lots of treasure troves. So if you're a practice owner listening to this, Brandon, give us what the scoop on this. Like, how do we go to market with this as a practice owner for that person versus like a W-2 who's only working for one company? Like, how does it differ for me as a practice owner?
Yeah. So, no, first and foremost, I think there's a misconception that an independent rep is a rep that didn't make it in the W-2 world. I think that that probably was the case 10 years ago. So, especially with Benev, how they've hired Latibo reps. These Latibo reps left jobs making a quarter million plus a year. So, first and foremost, you have to have unwavering self belief in order to jump out on your own because you don't have a salary. You start off at zero, you make zero each and every quarter if you don't work. So, you have to work. So, first and foremost, you have to have unwavering self belief and incredible work ethic. So, I think that the key for an independent going out on their own, before I answer the physician portion of the question, is you don't just want to sell one product. You want to be known as your brand, your name, the fact that you are a connector for that physician to anything that they need in the aesthetics world, whether it be operations, whether it be product, whether it be service. So, my advice to any independent rep, and this is what we're trying to build for independent reps, and we have built, is you want to have access to peptides. So the top three things in aesthetics right now, in my opinion, and I know that we had this conversation prior to our podcast, regenerative, AI, and peptides are the three hottest buzzwords, and they are not going anywhere. Just like you said, you utilize AI in order to make your world easier. Physicians haven't started in the aesthetic world yet. Some have. Those who adopt sooner that are educating patients in the waiting room through AI and allowing them AI to do the consult are going to become more efficient. They're going to sell more and they're going to thrive. And so the key to the physician side is to understand that the best independent reps aren't just trying to sell products. They're trying to figure out what the practice needs. They're taking a tour of the practice's facility. The way that I describe it is when an independent rep starts, they should say, look, I've appreciated being your W-2 rep for a company for the past decade plus. What I would like to be for you is a true consultant that understands your business as a whole. Do you mind if we start from scratch? I take a tour of your facility. We sit down and go over everything that you're doing, what you need. Maybe it is AI to help them educate and sell. Maybe they're only offering GLP-1s and they're not aware of new peptides that the hot practices in Los Angeles are offering. Maybe they aren't aware of regenerative products and what's coming to the United States. Maybe they don't have the right patient financing solutions. So if a rep can go in and understand their business as a whole and have a solution for their problems, not just a square peg in a round hole, then they are a solution provider and a connector, not just a sales rep.
Well, and I think what you mentioned about Benev is a great example, which I told Aaron Green earlier on. I was like, hey, I'm gonna quit AR and come work for Benev. It sounds like a better deal. But they've taken reps who I went to, my onboarding with at Galderma, who are great reps, top, President's Club winners, to your point, inner circle. And now they're saying what you're saying is like, I want to graduate and become a consultant to the practice. I don't want to just be the person slinging one portfolio, which, by the way, I love my friends at all these places, but I want to be able to say what you just mentioned is let's walk around the facility and see what do you need? What will help you to grow? How can I give you what you want? I connect you to somebody or be the conduit to get that, done for you. That is sort of like the graduation, I think, of the sales rep. We've been in this industry long enough now. I mean, you've been in it as long as I have, that we're seeing that transition sort of occur. Like people saying, I need more from you. Like, I don't want to just walk around talking about reward programs. Like, what else do I need? How do I move forward? How do I get competitive in my market? That's what I think a 1099 contractor kind of model, the quote unquote, that contractor model. You are now the beacon for all these different practices with all these different solutions that you're giving them the world. I just think it's such a cool model. And if you told me this 10 years ago, Brandon, I'd have said you were crazy. I know
Yeah,
whenever Rev and S launched, we were all like, "Oh, they'll never make it. They're all contractors," and they crushed it. I mean, they did a great
it
job,
did.
but we were so
A lot of the
misguided.
contractors didn't want to
Yeah,
go full time.
yeah. And we were just we misunderstood the model. And to your point, we were trying to compare it to the way corporate America would work, and it's not corporate America. It is being able to be flexible, have some freedom, be able to pick and choose and curate your own portfolio of products to offer. I think there's a really cool thing if you're a practice owner and someone walks in your practice with this sort of model, they probably have this incredible chest full of amazing things that you could offer that are new and cutting edge because that's what they're going out looking for, right? They're looking for the things that you're looking for, the peptides, the regen, the handhelds. They're not looking for the normal thing that we've been selling for 15 years. So I think it's a different shift in our market. And I think those who are engaged with those reps are getting much different products and much different access than those who don't engage. So I think if you're a person listening to this, if that person comes in the door, see them, talk to them, let them work, with you in your practice. Because I know that Brandon he always has the hot button of all the cool things that are happening, and so do they. So I just think it's such a miss if you're not engaging those people. That's my TED talk, by the way, for the day. But anyway, I digress.
Hey, but you're spot on. And that, like I said, I think that I fielded over the last year, I probably fielded 150 calls from W-2 reps who are doing well. They like their company, but they just want the freedom of going off on their own. They want to have a business model that is sustainable, where they can potentially hire people underneath them. And so, yeah, the independent world. The other thing that I'll tell you from the company's perspectives, it allows a company coming from Europe to come to the United States and do it on a string budget versus a lot of people can't do what Endo Aesthetics did and survive, right? Where you hire 50 to 100 sales reps. Most can't do that. So the independent sales force, and especially the plethora of really high skilled tenured reps who are seeking to do this, the timing is now.
Well, and I think Endo might not have made it, Brandon. If we look back at that story, it may not have ended so well for those people. I think that's a good lesson, though. If you're wanting to get some really cool, innovative things, those companies can't afford to stand up a full business in the US on day one. They just can't. So if you want access to that, you have to kind of go through the trade route, which is using the connector that you need to get what you want. I think even like Regeron, I mean, they're still, we all know them because we're in this world every day, but not everyone knows who that even is because they don't have this big giant presence in the US yet because they kind of went at it, to your point, sort of in this independent sales rep kind of method. And I think it's working. People are hearing about it. The salmon sperm facials everywhere. My Lord. It's all over the place. I think that whole market is going to be led and driven by this kind of a sales model. I just don't
Well, and
envision.
Tiffany, you nailed it. And it's sustainable. So what Regeron's doing with careers and aesthetics now is we're hiring. We just hired an Eastern sales director. We're hiring a Western sales director as well as a national sales director for corporate accounts. And so they started off as 1099. They got in $10 million worth of revenue annually through the independent reps. Now they can afford to bring over W-2 reps to work alongside the independent reps. Those independent reps, some of them will probably have the opportunity to join W-2 if they want to. So it allows, just like what you said, these European companies, the South Korean companies to come to the United States, make it happen, and not do it and break the budget.
Well, and before we move on,
The Mage Group with Dr. Stephen Cohen is doing something very similar with Morphia and their hybrid exosomes and their stem cells, and I'm working alongside them too. It's extremely exciting.
we're going to dig into that in a second, but I have a question for you. As a CEO of a staffing firm doing high end professionals, what advice would you give somebody who's having a real struggle trying to find people for their practices and how to assess talent and find out if the person's a good fit? Like, give me one or two key things that you think are just the non-negotiables when you're recruiting great talent.
So the one thing that it makes my business not scalable, but I speak to every single candidate, number one. So my recruiting team finds the talent, and then I will do the final screening prior to sending them to the particular company. The key is this: I ask them about personal. So I always say, do you mind if we shift? I let them know who I am, and I ask them what gives them integrity and work ethic, as well as a motor or a competitive edge and drive. I would say more than half of candidates will go straight into what they do versus who they are. And so I think the unique quality that I have is getting to know these individuals on a personal basis. And I would say I probably keep in touch with more than 75% of the reps that we've placed, but I liked genuinely 90+% of them that have been placed. And so if they're likable, they have the right background, and you understand them as a human being outside of what they do and who they truly are, that's the absolute key.
Well, and I love what you just said about you stay in touch because we've even had this happen here where the person that interviewed was not the fit for us. They weren't the right person for us, but they referred somebody else in who was because they had a great experience with us. Even though they weren't the one for the job, it was like, hey, this is a really great experience and I know what you want and I'm not the person to give it to you, but I've got a friend who would be great for this job. I think in every interaction, especially in our world, it's so small, as you know, it's so tiny here. Every interaction that you have is a chance to either make a friend or a foe. You got to choose it. Whether that's recruiting, that's going into practice trying to sell something, that's an injector with a patient. Every chance you get, it's either friend or foe. And so I think if you look through your hiring process, if you're listening to this, think about that. That whoever you turn out and say no to, they're now your calling card. They're now your billboard. Make it a good experience because even if you reject someone, you can do it in a way that's loving, helpful, help continue on with the relationship, whatever that is. I think you've done a great job with that. People I know who know you personally and work with you, that, they always say what a great job you do and how much you focus on getting quality people into these roles and that it's like a personal mission for you, which I feel the same way. It's very personal for me to have great success for my clients and for their clients. And I just think that's a thing that we often miss at a practice when we think about hiring and recruiting and retaining. Is like they're humans too. We have to treat them like humans, whether we want them or not, because
Yeah.
they're going to go out and say our name to somebody. We want it to be a good thing on their tongue, not a bad thing on their tongue. So excellent
I had a
advice.
candidate yesterday who didn't receive the job, and she was down to the final stage. And I've probably logged 4 or 5 hours with this candidate. But this candidate is incredible. I will get her placed somewhere, and it's just yeah. So it's a personal relationship and getting to know them as a human being. I mean, I take pride, Tiffany, and this is a humble brag with Saiton and Rob Brindley and Aaron Burton and Dave Marchetti gave me a chance early on. We've had 15 placements there. 14 of them are still there. And we've had two out of the last three number one reps. And so, like, when you have that type of track record with an incredible company like Saiton, you know you're doing something right. And so I'm proud of that with working with Saiton. But I think that the number one thing that I learned through Saiton's culture, and I like to call it Saiton Nation, is getting to know them as a human. And they're really the ones that taught me that.
I love that. Yeah, I hope they're sending you like a nice steak dinner or a bottle of whiskey or something, a Christmas card for getting them all, the number one rep every year. That's incredible. But shifting a little bit to what you're doing now, that's really more on the innovation side. You are on some boards. So you're helping some companies. You're helping Thinner go to market, Ponce AI, and I'm working with some regenerative labs and doing some different things on the regenerative side. You got your hands in everything, Brandon. You're touching everything. So I want to kind of start from the top. So peptide market. We're all in a panic right now about GLP-1s, which I am not. I think there's ways around that, but I think people are really freaked out about I can't get semaglutide or tirzepatide anymore. What am I going to do? And my business is built on this, and the freak out moment is upon us. It's happening right now. I think with Thinner, you've got some cool alternatives to that, but just in that market in general, what are you hearing in the marketplace? What's the rumbling? And what are the solutions or alternatives that you're hearing are ways that practice can still do this and capture the weight loss market without maybe using those products?
Sure. So I think that number one, every aesthetic office has to understand that unless you are prescribing Ozempic or GLP-1s that are name brand, it's a little bit of a gray area. And so most are using compounded pharmacies, and compounded pharmacies have their hands in lots of different things, whether it be pain creams, they do a lot. So compounded pharmacies, some of them are getting shut down, some of the larger ones. And it's really the pharmaceutical companies that are going after these compounded pharmacies. It's not the FDA. So that's first and foremost. I think the key is to find a laboratory that just deals in peptides. If you find a laboratory that just deals with peptides, they deal with it in powder form where the office can have it on the shelves refrigerated for 2 years. Then they're not in a panic mode to get it for each individual patient in liquid form that only lasts 28 days. That's first. And a laboratory also has access to all peptides. I think that really what we're seeing is the big markets like LA, New York, Miami. Those are the types of regenerative clinics that are offering more than just GLP-1s. They're offering BPC 157 and TB 500 for pain and inflammation. They're offering NAD plus for cognitive. They're offering ipamorelin and tesamorelin for body composition instead of human HRT. So instead of testosterone replacement, hormone therapy. I personally have started taking NAD plus. Ipamorelin and tesamorelin. I no longer take the minimum of testosterone that I was taking, and I'm taking TB and BPC 157 for inflammation for my tennis elbow. And so I've gotten really into the peptide space. These are branch chain amino acids that are incredible, and they're not going anywhere. And the other thing that I'll tell you before we go into thinner is the clinics that have done well with the weight loss market have stayed profitable during the economic downturn predominantly because of peptides. That is a 100% true statement. And so those who hop on the peptide train now are going to thrive, especially those that are doing more than just weight loss peptides. To answer your question about the GLP-1 alternative, this getthinner.com is the website. So Thinner is the first GLP-1 alternative that is not injected, it's non-prescription, that is a sublingual drop and maintenance line. So a patient can choose this in lieu of doing tirzepatide, semaglutide, or the new one, retatrutide, or they can take a prescription peptide like those and then utilize this as a maintenance line that's all natural. They did a 600 patient study. The average patient, although the dietary restrictions were pretty ridiculous, I think it was under 1,200 calories a day, lost 25 pounds. Even if the patient does a 2,000 calorie less, they'll lose 13 pounds over 6 weeks. So I think that the practices that adopt peptides offer more peptides than just weight loss and also offer their patients an all natural alternative are going to thrive.
Well, I think there's a combination there too. So if you think about weight loss, I owned a CrossFit gym for a little while. And if you just go work out, it's not enough, right? You have to have nutrition and workout, and you have to have sleep, and you have to have recovery. It's a holistic thing. And so I think if you're only focusing on weight loss and not thinking about body composition and your tennis elbow, if you can't move, you can't do anything, right? You can't work out, you don't feel good, doesn't matter how skinny you are. I think it has to be this like sort of holistic thing where we go from start to finish of I need to have a body that moves, that feels good, that doesn't have inflammation, that I have energy, I feel like I'm alive, and I'm also losing weight. I think it's all together. And so I think if we look at this peptide market as this is a holistic or a platform play, a platform of all the things you should be doing so that the patient feels like they're inside out wellness. To me, that's like the mindset of this regenerative model. This whole peptide functional model is like it has to be everything. It can't be, you can't just do lips and not do cheeks, right? It's one of those, just like
Right.
injectables. 20 years ago, we just did lips. Now we do full face balancing, and everyone loves to say that. So I have to put a plug for that on the podcast. But it's sort of like the
Sure.
same thing as full face balancing, but it's, I guess, full body balancing. We should TM that, full body balancing. I think that is the model. I think thinner is a really cool way to do that, because it prevents this like hysteria about the peptide part of it and lets you focus on that as a practice, not be so mentally anguished about what's happening with GLP-1s every day. I think there's a way for you to do both, but it isn't just the GLP-1, it's everything else that you're talking about too. And so I think that's where the lab idea is really cool. Get somebody who knows all this and who can supply you with it and can give you this
And it's
line.
education too.
Absolutely.
The two things I would mention is Thinner also has an app that tracks the patient's health journey, their macros, their exercise, their sleep. And so it really kind of holds the patient accountable to not just lose the weight, but to keep it off and stay healthy. And with peptides, you nailed it. There's so many ways that peptides can help your life and benefit your life. But the difference is practices should find a laboratory that has access. So I like to use acronyms. Good labs have access, good price, and 99% plus purity. What I've noticed in the peptide world is a lot of doctors will be getting a really inexpensive product from China and they find out that it's 96% plus pure. The best peptide labs, the ones that I deal with, have 99 plus percent purity and it's guaranteed or their money back.
Yeah, that's also part of like getting it sourced in the U.S. Like there's a whole chain of custody, I think, with, if you look at even like Amazon with skincare, right? Everyone's like, well, you don't know where you're going to get it from. And you don't. Just like a peptide, you don't. You don't know unless you know where it's coming from. You don't know where it's coming from. And I think there is a risk right now of that. I think just like in aesthetics, it's growing so quickly. It's a cash cow here. Everyone sees money. They see dollar signs. I think the labs in some cases, not those who are not as reputable, they're seeing this as a money play. It's like, I'm going to come fly by night, give you what I can give you, get the money, then I'm going to run. You're going to find out it's not pure.
100%.
You're going to find out it's not the right thing, and I've made my money. I don't care. I think you've got to do some personal vetting or find your connector, find a person like Brandon who knows, find your connector and get a reputable source, because if you do this well, it is gangbusters. And if you don't do it well, it's a lot of headache in the long run because people are unhappy, you have issues. You got to do it right the first time. So I think spend the time to get a good lab. Who are your recommendations? Do you have any good recommendations you can plug on the pod?
Yeah, so there's a laboratory that I deal with called Center Labs out of California, and so they are the absolute best that I know of. And the key is, like I said, they when they earn business, they will tell the clinic if they buy 100 vials of tirzepatide that if they want, they will actually tell them where to get it tested because they test it by on their own, third party tested. And if they want to test it on their own, a random vial, it doesn't come back 99% plus pure, they get their money back.
That is a quality promise if I've ever heard one. I love that. I love the idea that we're like, hey, you want to test it? Go for it. Go do it. And here's where you can go do it. I think that is brilliant. So thinner is hot on the press. I think it's THINNR. Spell it for
Yeah.
me.
And it's
Okay.
get thinner, www.getthinner.com.
And I saw this on actually on Brandon's LinkedIn's how I found it. I was like, this is such a cool concept, very novel because people are a little bit scared about the prescriptive part of it in some cases. Those who are on the fence still trying to figure out, do I want to do a GLP-1 or not? I hear I get sick, it's semaglutide, everyone's puking their brains out. This, I think, is an alternative for that. It's a different way to look at it. So if you're a practice who's on the fence about this and you're kind of nervous about either bringing one in or them being taken away, this is a great alternative. And I think you guys have some real results. Like the science is there. I looked at some of the studies that they were doing on the website. I mean, there's some real science and some real great results. So,
Well, what's cool is I know you know this, but I helped launch Repeat MD, and one of the top team members on Repeat MD is the CEO and founder of Thinner. So that's where the technology and the app and the health journey was. So he's got a tech background, and then one of the other owners is actually a healthcare provider.
well, that's great. That's what you need right now. You need technology, you need healthcare all mixed together. Which brings us to our next innovation that's kind of happening right now, and we have so many to choose from. But the handheld device market, I love what you mentioned to me before the podcast that these groups that are growing because PE is coming in, everyone's opening new locations. You can't buy $100,000 device for 8 clinics at once; it's just not possible. And folks are transient. They're going from clinic to clinic. They're one worker servicing 3 different markets, and they're in their car all day, going back and forth. The handheld idea for me is just such a cool concept because you get the same results, you get a great outcome, but you don't have to have the clunky device or the cost of the device. So walk us through where that's going because I feel like that is the next foray for all these big guys with big boxes. They're going to wish they had built a handheld device soon. So tell us how that's working.
Yeah, sure. I started off my business during COVID, and I became an owner of a small plasma pen, but it comes in a small suitcase where the providers can take it office to office. So a lot of newer companies, there's a new company I'm on their advisory board called XOD. Lee Hamoff is the founder and CEO. He was a top rep for Roar, and so he kind of brought over the price transparency that Roar had, and he saw a niche in the market where handheld devices are key. And so they have 3 or 4 out of their devices that can be moved from office to office that fit in a suitcase. They've got a new monopolar RF device that I'm not exaggerating. I had it myself. I was treated at a Pavis event recently where they have wristbands where the RF energy goes through the provider's hands and you get an energy-based facial massage. I have never experienced anything like it. But the key is this, you nailed it. If you're a small med spa and you're looking to grow, and whether you do it on your own or you're PE owned, you want to have a device that is proven. And so you can have price transparency, small device that can go office to office very easily. And then as you grow and you get busy enough, you add another one. I think a lot of these med spa chains get in trouble is they overspend initially to have these expensive, good devices, incredible devices. I recruit for a lot of these companies, but if they overspend initially, they could get in a lot of trouble on the back end. And so having the ability to move the devices, having price transparency, having them be not inexpensive, but affordable and efficacious, I think is key. But check out a company like XOD. I think a lot of companies are starting to make devices like that. I know that MRP was distributing a new Thermage belt. It is a belt that goes around your waist that has 2 fractal wavelengths. I think Solta is actually distributing it now. And so there will be a shift and people will start seeing more mobile devices for sure.
Or the technology is just not getting there. Or we can put it's like the iPhone. we can just now put all that technology into a handheld device. But our dear friend here, Kelly Hermans, she has one of the XOD devices. She speaks for them, and she was like, "Listen, I can afford to get the big one, but I like this. This is easy for me. It's mobile. I can go from room to room. Like it's just simple." And I think to your point, if you're adding on people, providers, and you have one big device to share all of that, figure out the rooms and who can book it. Sometimes the ROI takes a bit longer to achieve because you can't do enough humans because you have one at a time. I think with the handheld, if you're paying less per device, you can scale your devices with your people. So you can see, obviously you can see more, but then at some point maybe you graduate into an actual a permanent box in a room. That's the big box kind of thing. But I think it's just a really cool idea. As we look at concierge medicine, we look at these guys who know they want to keep moving. I have a small group today, but I want to move to a bigger office tomorrow and a bigger office in 3 years. I've got dreams of going and going and going. Great. This is a great way to invest in a really cool technology, but not spend your entire purse on one device, which I agree. There's some amazing devices out there, and I would tell you, go get them. I'm all for it. But this is just a really cool alternative. And I love the thing with the wrists and coming through the hands. That is very interesting technology.
Energy-based facial massage. I've never experienced anything like it.
That's so cool. And now, if you're in practice, how do you see this working? Do they have a little table next to the bed? Because we're thinking about a big box, our normal thing. How does this work at the actual point of care versus having a big device in the room?
Yeah, tabletop can sit on a desk right next to the patient and or on the floor, and so extremely mobile. These fit in a handheld suitcase, so you can pack it up within 3 to 4 minutes and carry it from location to location. You can do concierge services, which I think is going to be growing significantly as well, where you're not just having Botox parties, but now you're having Botox, Dysport, whatever parties at a patient's home where you can also bring these devices. Before you weren't able to do that with 200-pound devices.
And for trainers, if you're training in practices all the time, this is mobile. You can take this to the practice and train with it. I think that's the other part. We were seeing this training explosion as we've been seeing for the past couple of years. Everyone's got a training school now. These are the kind of things that if you want to really give a provider a diverse education, this is a great way to do that. Because if I come to you to just learn, to your point, Botox Dysport, now you have to say Botox Dysport, Jeuveau, Devo. Now the list is so much longer, but to just do that is not enough. I need to learn more. I think peptides being part of that too. But this is just such a cool way, I think, to pack a punch with a small form factor, hopefully a smaller cost, and the same results. Amazing results for what you see as this little small thing.
Tiffany, imagine when I was a rep back in 2008, even the reps were able to demo devices. That was discontinued. You can no longer do that, where you have to spend the money to have an actual nurse or clinical trainer or nurse practitioner PA do it. So with a lot of these devices that aren't considered true class medical devices, you can actually go and demo these products. And so some of them are so easy to use and such a low class when it comes to just a medical device that they can demo the product too. And so when you can wheel a device in as a sales rep and actually have the provider feel the device on their skin, it's much easier to sell as well. So it's great for the practices, it's unbelievable for patients, and it's also great for the companies because now the reps can demo it.
Yeah, I love it. It's a win for everybody. I mean, I think it's awesome. So moving right along to your whole list of things that you're doing right now. We've been talking to this Ponce I group as well. You could turn us on to these guys. They're doing this really science-based, so not just a free marketing, a true science-based, in a sense, like a diagnostic consultation via an app with the patient that will tell them directionally what they might need to have done in the practice. And so it sort of skips that unknown part that a lead comes in and says, I don't know what I want. It kind of skips all that. It gives them some kind of pre-qualification with the patient, but has really great data that's actually rooted in science and some true AI modeling behind it. And I think it's kind of the first of its kind with a phone or an app-backed system to do this. And from a founder who has been a serial entrepreneur, a big tech guy, has a wife who's a physician, he comes from that sort of tech medicine background. And I think this technology is going to be a big game changer for our industry. And it brings in all things that you and I love, both the aesthetics part and the technology part. So give us an idea of where that is going. Because we're seeing auras coming out. We have InstiMed, we have Perfect Core, all these groups doing this, but this one is a little bit different. So give us an idea of kind of where that varies and how that fits into our overall sort of AI play for the industry.
Yeah, so I think it's important, much like I say, to get to know people on a personal level before you know what they do. So Sagum Aurora is the CEO and founder of Ponce AI. It's Ponce, PONCE.ai. It's a web-based app. So he built this for his wife, who's a plastic surgeon, Dr. Tanya Judge in San Francisco. They were building her practice. It was right before COVID. They had spent a ton of money on the infrastructure, and all of a sudden COVID hit. They had looked at devices like TouchMD and Vizia, and I love both of them. And so I think they're great technology, but they have limitations because it's more just for the provider to do a skin analysis just for coloration. And so they, instead of buying that, he built the software. So his background, he was on the pre-lift IPO team. He also has built another fintech company called Sidecar that's valued at over $100 million, extremely successful guy. So he was able to build an AI platform that scans the patient's face from a smartphone, and it will give the patient a treatment plan and also educate the patient on what can be done, and then show them an actual photo versus morphing technology that gives unrealistic expectations of a similar patient who had similar facial features and coloration as to what they can look like after having these procedures done. So by the time the patient sees the provider, they know what can be done, what products can be used, what procedures can be done, and now they have a list of dedicated questions to ask the provider. The provider then has a much more efficient consultation where and I think the key to this is practices don't love to sell. I mean, Tiffany, you worked at Galderma, you understand this. There are so many estheticians, director of first impressions, even healthcare providers, doctors, nurse practitioners, and PAs. They love treating patients. They dislike selling emphatically. And so this alleviates them from having to do that. This provides education that is also selling. So what they're seeing after having this consultation software utilized in the waiting room is a 50 to 300% increase in patient spend. They've treated over 10,000 patients. It's incredible technology. It's all they have to do is spend 2 1-hour calls, the practice, in order to get onboarded. It only warehouses the products and procedures that they offer within the practice. And then they can either warehouse their own before and after pictures, which is the best, and or the company will provide them. And so AI is coming. It's incredible. I think the adaptation is going to be incredible. And I think it will become the standard of care in the next 5 years.
Well, and I think people, I was on a panel with this guy I don't know, 2 weeks ago at Core, and the first question the audience asked was, "Well, how's it going to sell to my patients? Like, it doesn't know what they need, how many they're going to have." And we're like, "That's not the technology. We're not telling them to have 15 minutes of Dysport. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that you have a wrinkle concern. This is how you could solve it with this product." The practitioner still has to do practitioner things, right? They're still saying you should get 2 cc's or 1 cc, or you need to get this peptide or this thing. It is a directional consultation tool that says, this is what we have in our inventory of tools. You fit the mold for this. We recommend that you get this thing. Now here's the education around that thing. When you get to the practice, they're going to tell you how much that thing you actually have to have. I think the practitioners in the room were in a sense of a kind of a panic moment, high blood pressure moment of like, this is going to replace me of the actual prescription. It's like, no. We're not saying the units. We're saying this is what you need. This product fits the bill of what you need. So I think if people are hearing this thinking like, how's it going to know it? Don't promise outcomes, don't promise units. It's not doing that. It is a directional tool because in my mind, Brandon, what you mentioned, they don't want to sell. But if a patient comes in educated with questions to ask already, they know what they do and don't want, they understand your product portfolio, think of all the crap you can cut from your consultation. Like, you can actually spend time doing the things that matter and not talking about, here's what Botox does, here's what a filler is. If you could skip all of that and go right to the meat of the conversation, it's like when you're here, we demo things all the time for software. If they know what software does, it's so much easier than if they don't know what software does. If they're a paper charting client, it's like, but for them to know what we have and compare it to their other product, it's so much easier to sell to that person because they get it, their frame of reference. This is, to me, like a really strong frame of reference. It's rooted in science, AI, and it just also is very novel because no one else is doing it. And I think if you're a practice who's like, consultations, this is like the wave of the future. You got to get on board because, to your point about Vizia and TouchMD, who we love them both dearly, you've got to be a butt in the chair in the practice to get that done. They've got to be in the practice. This can be done anywhere, I'm pretty sure. With the iPad app, he's like, we can take this anywhere. Or the iPhone app, he's like,
Anywhere.
you can do this anywhere. So at their house, lead gen before you come in. Hey, before you come into the practice next week, go ahead and do this analysis. We'll get it. We'll look through it so that when you get here, we're ready for you. I think there's a whole
Well,
lot.
Tiffany, what else they're noticing is they will send a link to have this done on their smartphone to patients that haven't been in the practice in 2 years. They're bringing back new patients. They're modernizing the patient experience. And I think you touched on something huge because the first couple of physicians, key opinion leaders that I brought this to, they didn't like the idea of losing their artistry and their artistic development. And they noticed after going through the demo that it's just an educational, data driven tool where they are the final decision maker as the true artist.
And if you look at pre-AI time, because this is when I was in Galderma, we were building this with Chris Licks for the whole facial morphing thing. We were so focused on the science because Chris Licks had been doing this with breast implants for years. I looked at competitors and they were looking at how to push product. They were building morphing tools and things that were really focused on how can I sell the product to the patient? How can I show that they need a skincare item or they need this particular filler? It was very much about a sales mentality. I believe that this product is very much rooted in a consultation, diagnostic, education mentality where it's like, we're going to use what you have on your portfolio of products at the office because that's what you have to offer. But the point of it is for us to help them with the concern. Like, what is the concern the patient has? What is the aesthetic need that they have? And then we will go look in our inventory and see what we have to fit that need. Not we have a lot of spoons and you got a fork. I think there's a mindset that pre-AI, it was like, we have these things to sell. Now, who can I sell them to? I think it's now an opposite mentality. And that's
Well,
what I think makes
Tiffany,
it
and you
so
nailed
cool.
something huge because the data that this is going to give the companies, we're in talks with a couple of companies to partner and add this. So when a device is sold, that they'll get this tool for 6 months for free, something like that. The data that this gives us about what particular practices and what particular regions and patients are seeking is huge.
Mm-hmm.
They will know what skincare products, what skin color are being treated, what procedures. So the data behind it is a giant win as well for the device companies as well as for the provider.
And side note, I'm not an investor or paid speaker, by the way. But I just thought it was a very novel technology. And then I met the gentleman that started it, and we, kind of walked through the whole thing. I was like, oh, this is really cool for me. I think this is a great way of, because I think AI, Brandon, is very hard to understand. If you don't know how it could work for you, like the idea of like an agentic model. People are like, what is an agent? Like, what does an agent do? An agent's not a chat bot, right? It's a thing that can do stuff in systems. Like it can make things happen, trigger things. Even that concept is so foreign to people. I think the idea that AI is in this consultation process, that is still a mythical unicorn. No one knows what that even means. I think this really brings to life like what we're talking about to say across 10,000 patients, these are the things that are similar. This is what usually presents. Here's a typical solution for what presents. Here's how we typically would do that thing. That's how you build this, sort of a very smart querying system, if you want to call it that. I think the data behind it is he's got such a rich amount of data to say, this is what really happens. This is what you actually need to get done. That's how AI can be used today. I think it's still such a black box, like a little Pandora's box, that no one's figured it out yet. But I think you and I'm on a different side of the fence, obviously running a tech company. We're using it for everything every day, especially diagnosing our code. We look at it for our code and say, is the code got a bug? Okay, what's the bug about? How can we fix it? What you're doing in the practice, we're doing in our own software, using the same kind of tools, that same kind of idea, just a different widget. So I just think this is what 2025 and beyond, it'll be this or nothing. It's this or bust, I feel like, going forward.
Well, and plus, I mean, I can tell you as a patient, when I go in, I've got a good relationship with the injectors that I've used. And a lot of times you'll just talk about personal things where I'll leave the office and I don't know that they just added the M Sculpt, right? Or a body device that I probably would have paid for because I want to look as good as I can possibly can look. And so when you've got this AI tool, it forces education on each patient, and patients don't want to be pushed in salesman-y manners. They would prefer to be educated.
And the biggest miss for practice, revenue wise, is if I come into your practice and I get put with a provider who doesn't like to sell that thing or doesn't like to talk about it or can't figure out how to talk about it, and I don't know you have it, and I don't get it from you. And then I go down the street and someone's like, oh, of course I can do that here. We have this thing. Come on in. And I get treated there when the whole time you had that device, you had that technology, but the person didn't tell me that. That is a giant issue. It happens every day where one practice forgets to tell you, they don't talk about it, they don't do the full assessment, they don't do the full diagnostic, and you don't know. And you go down the street and you find out that you could be doing all these things. Are you kidding me? Then the patient's like, don't go to that practice. Go to this one. They're much better. They're much more thorough. They're much
It
more.
reduces the risk of a practice having apprehension to buy a device because now they can add new technology, they can add new regenerative products, they can add peptides because they know that each and every patient will be educated.
And there's like a bit of a self-service model to that too. Like the patient's self-serving to find out what all you do have. That way they come in, again, equipped to ask questions. And I think there is a concern that patients are going on YouTube, WebMD, whatever. An educated patient, whether right or wrong, is an asset because they come in knowing something. I'd rather them get the wrong information, but at least feel like they're aware. Then I can tell them what is or is not true versus like they know nothing about this. And this is like their first day to ever talk about an injection. I have to tell them why to get injected first. Like that's a different place to start than you just have, you have filler and toxin confused. That's a much better place to start than I've never done anything at all. And I just use Walmart, skin cream. Different conversation. So I think we're jumping the shark here with this new technology. But so if you guys didn't catch that, it's Ponce.ai. And again, I'm not a paid spokesperson. I just think this is where we're going. And I think there's other great tools, amazing tools. I think Aura is incredible. It's got a whole iPad interface. It does a full 360 everything. I mean, it's incredible technology as well. It's just not in the patient's hand. It's going to be in the practice. So I think we're going to see some shifts there. We're launching a big like chart smart feature here in a few weeks where you can actually do all the chart notes. You can record everything and then do the whole procedure notes. You can, put your prompts in, kind of like what Free AI has. That's our next big thing here because that's the other part is documentation really sucks. Making it easy for documentation to just record the visit and then do all the chart notes. What are the other places that you're seeing AI really impacting the practice at the clinical, the point of care, not marketing, all that, we know that, but on the clinical aspect, where do you see it going from here?
Tiffany, the one thing I didn't mention that physicians, as a side note, love it for is being able to do consults at home for one day. So for Dr. Judd, she does Friday consults at home because of the AI technology. And so if you can be home that one extra day as a physician and aesthetic provider, it just makes your life that much more fulfilling and easier.
Yes, and you can like get your laundry done. Because as a parent,
Right.
this is hard, and I think you're more satisfied, you're happier, and if you're home in a controlled environment, I think the consultation is better. If you're home in a place where you're quiet, you feel comfortable, because the consultation, if you're rushing the practice, it's the pits. Like to only have a 5 minute window to talk about your entire aesthetic journey, it's not enough. And I think we oftentimes squeeze into this little bitty tiny session because we're so booked all day long that consultation can turn into a $45,000 patient in a year or two. You have no idea what that is, a cash cow. If they feel heard, understood, they know the options for you, like that consultation can pay some bigger rewards. So it's a thing to take time and to enrich the process, enrich the experience with these kinds of tools, because that is like the billboard. That's the calling card. That's step number one. And I love what you said about re-engaging patients, because to get somebody back in the door is hard. If they've not been here for a while, it's hard. But to send this out, say, hey, we have this cool new device or a cool new set of things. Do this and see if it's a fit for you. That's an awesome way for me to kind of try before I buy to see if this is even a thing that's relevant for me. I love the re-engagement. That is a massive, for a marketing person, that's a massive benefit that you hadn't even scratched the surface on that
You
yet.
guys are great at it. I know that for a fact. Another thing I love that you mentioned the value of a patient is there are new companies on the patient financing side, Shalem, Shalem, where the doctor basically has the patient that has a lower credit score pay for the cost of the procedure, and then they allow them to finance the other 50%. So at least the practice doesn't lose that patient, but for the 60 to 70% of patients that follow through with payment, they get that patient for life.
Mm-hmm.
So you lose nothing, right? And then you gain a new 60, 70% of the patients. So re-engaging patients and giving access to patients that might not be able to afford it now, huge ways to increase your profitability and revenue.
Well, it's interesting, Brandon. Your timing is impeccable because we just launched today Sunbit in our system as part of our Stripe portfolio, and they have like a 90% approval rate. And the idea is the same. People were really upset about this idea of patient financing. Like, it is more. It's a 5.5% fee, I guess, versus like 2.75, whatever it is. And then it's like, oh, it's just so expensive. Like, but this patient would have never said yes. You would have never had this patient because they couldn't afford what you're offering, or they would have just got a cheap little service. Now they can become part of your world for a long time because they're going to see a great result, able to get more things that have, obviously a better impact. And that little fee that you pay is your marketing expense. Like, write that shit off. Like, it doesn't matter.
That's
Write that off.
exactly. So if you look at the top types of providers that deal with patient financing the best, plastic surgeons, dentists, and LASIK surgeons, refractive surgeons, and they offer it to every patient. And what you'll find if people like me who pride myself on my 800 plus credit score, I utilize 0% patient financing, or if I'm buying furniture all the time, and I end up buying more. And so it's a lot of dermatologists don't like patient financing because all they look at is the rate. But what they don't understand is when they lose the patient, they lose the lifetime of the patient, and they lose them on not just their med derm, but now their aesthetics too.
Well, and if you are a person with a little bit of money and you understand time value of money, I have a degree in finance, so this is like I lived this for 4 years. It is cheaper for me to use your money, not my money. Like, why would I not use your money? If your money is free, I'm not going to tie up my funds if I could just use yours for free and pay it off in 12 months. Like, if you're a person who's looking at your money working hard for you, patient financing is genius because then I don't have to put that money, it's not tied up somewhere. I'm actually paying a little bit each month at no cost to me, at no penalty to
You
me.
end up spending more.
Yes, at least I do always. I mean, I'm terrible. But I think that this idea that it has to be a patient who has a low credit score, except that, that's kind of been the thing for years. Like, no, people go get their breast implants with care credit all the time who could afford it with one in cash, but they don't want to. There's no point if you get a better rate. If you don't have to spend your money plus, it just makes sense to me. But I think patient financing for our industry in the summer months this year, the June, July months, is going to become a critical backbone for practices because people are feeling the recession. Here we don't really in Texas. We're kind of recession proof in Texas, but people I'm hearing it all over the country. They're squeezing their belts. Yeah, Florida too. We're sister states. But as people feel that and they tighten their belt, even if they have money, they're going to choose not to use their money. Rainy day fund, right? Keep it on the rainy day fund. This is an option for them to keep going with you as a practice, to keep spending with you, and not take a hit on their kids' private school tuition or lunches or mortgages or whatever else it is. This is a solution for that. So if you're not thinking about patient financing, I mean, it's like a repeat MD commercial. Go look into how you can get that done. If you're an AR, we have Cherry and Sunbit, but to me, it's a no-brainer. I think everyone should be doing it. I think it's a great way to get patients in, and it's a huge lead gen tool too. Because if I'm not thinking about, I don't really know if I can or not. The fact that you have it, I'll come in the door. I may not use it, but the fact that you have the option for me, I'm willing to try you out to see if I like you because I know if I do like you, there's an option for me to pay for it with financing. So if you're not doing it, here's your sign. Go get it done. Go sign up.
100%.
I'm a big believer. All right, I'm sure we've almost at an hour here. I could talk to you all day long.
Hey, Tiffany, can I ask you one question? I want you because I've listened to your podcast. Can you just tell the audience about your background because you going from Dillard's to being a rep, I think it's incredible to running as chief growth officer. What you're doing, your story is incredible, and I think it should be told. Working for Galderma for over a year, and then really taking the rein by the horns and doing what you've done. Do you just walk me through like a 2-minute description to give people hope that, I mean, in 11 years, 12 years, you've gone from working at Dillard's in order to really running a company?
Well, I think so. I worked for Walmart as a vendor for many years and built their leadership program. That's kind of where I learned scale. All my jobs have been scale, kind of like what you said about you want to grow with leadership. It's always been about scaling something. So from Walmart, then to Dillard's, and that was across the whole country. So kind of a coast to coast outreach. And
Yeah.
so you learn all the
I didn't
regional.
mean it to mean. Yeah, I just knew that you went. Your ascension was incredible.
Yeah, so Dillard's was really cool because I got to work with people of all different levels. And then from there, we owned a couple CrossFit gyms. And so I got into aesthetics in 2015 with Galderma. Year one as a sales rep, about a year and a half. And I was a big business consultant. That was kind of my background before, was in consulting. So it was a great fit because practices needed to have a consultant. They didn't need to have another widget. They needed to have a person to tell them how to build their business. So I did that pretty intensely for about a year and a half. And then I built Gain. My claim to fame, Brandon, is probably building Gain for Galderma. And I did that for 5 years, or 4-ish years. Yeah, so I was the Gain lady. It was still international. We'd had their first train the trainer, and so I took over Gain in 2016, almost 17, and did that for many, many years. I think the whole nurses on podium was like a big thing for me, a passion project. We called it Gen Now back then. It's like if you're an injector who is injecting, I don't care what your degree is. If you're legally able to inject in your state, obviously, but if you're a great injector, be on the podium. Tell us your story. Tell us your techniques. So that was kind of my big claim to fame, was really getting the injectors who were doing the things on the podium, not just those who had the DR in front of their name. And from there, it was kind of an easy solution for me to come to AR because I love building technology. It's very near and dear to my heart. I love innovation. And I also love to build things from small to very large. I love the idea of going from zero to hero. So we were at a good place as a company. We had a couple hundred accounts here, and it was like, let's go game busters with this. And so I think the technology background here, you've got to be so technology focused. And I love building things. And I think you have to really understand how technology works, but also the marketing side, the sales side, the people development. I think you've got to be in a startup, as in a startup, you've got to be so learning agile and roll with the punches, and you got to clean the toilet today, but then be the CEO of a company tomorrow. Like, you just got to be able to do the things. And I just feel like that's kind of probably my skill set, is just whatever it takes, I'll get it done. And we've been fortunate here to grow crazy fast. I mean, we put a lot of work into it. It's definitely not luck. It's not without sleepless nights, but the industry is also, it's booming. We love that. But part of our benefit here, what I think we've built here, is we are a business resource, much like you are. We want to empower business to do better, not just have an EMR or solution. How do I make the business be able to be stronger, faster, better, compliant, whatever those things are, through software? And so I think our mission here is to make the patient outcome better, the practice outcome better through the software that we build. And so I think that's always our kind of our North Star. And it's been a blessing for us to be able to do that at such a big scale, and hopefully even more around the world very soon. So that's my story, Brandon.
That we have so much in common, being a parent, running companies. I am humbled and honored to be on your podcast, and I'm excited to have the CEO and founders of the companies that I'm on the advisory board to interview with you as well. The last thing I'll mention about peptides is, if you're if you're an office offering peptides, get in with practices in your community and buy together, because if you can buy in bulk, it is always less expensive.
And for your devices too. Larry Blevins, I'm sure you know Larry. He's the king of this. Like,
I know Larry.
He's like, I get 9 of my friends together. We say we'll buy 10 devices. We'll get a much better deal. I said, that's genius, because they need quantity as well, just like we do, right? They want to have a big sell of 10 devices, not just one. I think as we look at this industry in general, all the consolidation happening, private equity firms is a whole different animal, private equity coming in. It's just a different world today than it was 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago. I think.
Well, and Tiffany, if they can maintain their independence and maintain business ownership by using alternative routes, right, and create buying groups. So that's one thing I'm working on with Darren Tillman at Brand MD, and some certain things is we're trying to create partnerships where it makes things like peptides more affordable and easier to integrate into your practice.
Yeah, as a person who gets called by an investor every single day, I will go kicking and screaming in the night. Like, I am a control freak, Brandon. I like to do things the way I want to do them. I feel like I've got more to do. I think as a practice too, you have more. I'm not ready yet. People are ready. I wouldn't be ready yet. There's more to do here. There's more lives to touch, more things to build. And I think practices feel the same way. They want to keep going, keep building, keep doing more before they actually sell to somebody else and move on to their next adventure. So do what you can. I think the buying groups are huge. Just being a smart business person, getting connections, like, the connector that helps you to get the right stuff at the right time for the right price. That is invaluable in this industry, because you're competing with yourself, last year's numbers, the year before's numbers, but also with, the person down the street, and with patients who have a wallet that they can spend at, the Lemaire counter or at your office. I think you're competing with a lot of different things in this like a retail medical space. That it is a wild west out there, Brandon. We got to do whatever we can to stay competitive. But I love what you're doing. I think you've got some cool stuff going on. And guys, if you have not followed him yet on Instagram or on LinkedIn, for sure, your LinkedIn content's awesome. Go follow Brandon for sure. Tell us how to find you, websites, anything that we can find, Instagram. What are your handles?
So yeah, careersandaesthetics.com and at Brandon James Thompson on Instagram. If you see how I parent and run a military and coach basketball and baseball, and get my daughter to Kumon and cheer. And then on the business side, btmedicalinnovations.com, careers and aesthetics. I appreciate the opportunity, Tiffany. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, come to my house and raise my child, because he's a hellion. He's a little mini terrorist. So come to Texas and fix my kid.
Body by Brandon boot camp. I'll make it happen.
Well, thank you for your time today, and I appreciate coming on. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you very, very soon. And with that, we're going to sign off. All right. See you next week. Bye, guys.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of For the Record. This podcast is not intended to provide legal or medical advice. It's for entertainment, education, and information purposes only. For more information on this week's guest, or to get started with Aesthetic Record, email us at info@aestheticrecord.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more fresh perspectives on disrupting the status quo and surviving in the aesthetics industry.